he was young and he'd just been convicted, and he was depressed, and he was all kind of down in the dumps, saying, my life is over. And we had this conversation that I basically said to him, you have two choices. You can either carry on being depressed and, spend the next 10 years sitting in a cell for 23 hours a day and be released, still depressed, because, it doesn't just, you don't get over it just because you are released. Or you could take advantage of the situation that you're in.
Welcome to the Becoming Sound podcast, where we dive into the tough stuff and try to find the humor in the hot mess of being an adult child. Join me as we peel back the layers on growing up in dysfunction, navigating substance abuse, mental health challenges, and everything in between. Hi, and welcome back to the Becoming Sound podcast. I'm Krista Zaft, and if you're new here, welcome to my little corner of the podcast world. I'm so glad you're here. And today, my guest is Sam Morris. She is a certified empowered dating, relationship skills, and sex coach. And she has been helping people heal and recognize what healthy relationships look like and empowering people to create one for over 10 years. She is also the host of her own podcast, Whatever Happened to the Gentlemen. And today, we're going to be diving into the intricacies of self-discovery, self-love, and healthy relationships, and how Sam's life course changed because of a man who was feeling lonely and sad and isolated and had lost hope. And one conversation between them changed both of their lives for the better. So when people ask Sam why she works on relationships and dating, her answer is easy, because everyone deserves to know what a happy and healthy relationship is. So let's dive in with Sam. Welcome, Sam. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. And where are you joining us from today?
So I am in the UK, in a place called Leicestershire, which is like literally in the middle of the UK.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your story and how you started doing the work that you're doing.
So my story, it kind of begins when I left university. I had done a law degree and I started working in the courts team, and I hated every single second of it. So I don't know if you've ever had a job where you wake up in the morning and you think, I would rather be kind of hit by a bus than go to work today.
Yes, I have. Thank you for reminding me. Yes,
that's how I felt.
Not a good place to be in.
Definitely not. So I was like desperately searching for a new job, but I did like the government perks, so the pension and the flexible working that you get. So I found myself, I got a job in an all-male high-security prison.
Wow.
And everyone kind of had that reaction of they thought that I was insane.
Yeah, it's a tough job.
Yeah. And very quickly, because short staff and training, they kind of just give you a caseload of people. And I got this, he was only 21 at the time, which, to be fair, I wasn't much older than him. But he was young and he'd just been convicted. And he was depressed. And he was all kind of down in the dumps, saying, my life is over. And we had this conversation that I basically said to him, you have two choices. You can either carry on being depressed and, spend the next 10 years sitting in a cell for 23 hours a day and be released, still depressed, because, it doesn't just, you don't get over it just because you are released. Or you could take advantage of the situation that you're in. No, it's not a great one, but you did do something to be here.
Yeah.
You can go get yourself an education. You can go and sort out kind of all your emotional stuff that you really need to sort out. You can go and do courses in here that people outside of prison would pay thousands of pounds to do. And then you'd be released and hopefully change your whole life and never come back here. But it is up to you what you want to do. And he went off and he started making changes, and he applied to do a university course, and then he started putting himself on all these programs. And I was like, maybe I'm good at talking to people. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I retrained. That's like the short version of it is I decided to retrain to be a probation officer. And through that retraining process, I got to the section where we start learning about healthy relationships and what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I realized that my marriage was full of lies. It was full of manipulation, abuse, cheating, all these things that, you know, in the textbooks was a no, this is not good. And so that one conversation that I had led me to a divorce, being back at home, and obviously a complete career turnaround. Over the years, that has changed. Like I worked in probation for a long time. I've worked in 2 different prisons, working with people with different addictions and healthy relationships. And then I branched out on my own because I realised that no one is ever taught what a healthy relationship is in school. People aren't taught, you know, how to argue where it doesn't turn into screaming matches. And how to kind of set your standards and your boundaries and stick to them. That's not just a problem for people that have got criminal convictions. It's an every person problem.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of went with that.
Childhood has a lot to do with it too. We adopt our parents' patterns of communication and whatever goes on in the house, that's what you learn. I mean, you don't know any different. Some things we learn at school, but there's some big gaps in the school system, right, about what we should be learning and stuff. But how did working in that system, because it's a tough system, you're dealing with a lot of mental health there. And how did that system impact your relationship style?
I think it taught me to be a better parent. And it taught me to be kind of calmer and to think and, you know, stop and actually reflect on what I was feeling. And maybe in that moment is not the best time to react. But it taught me communication skills. When you're dealing with people that aren't generally that calm, you have to constantly be kind of on edge of thinking, what do I do next? How do I keep myself safe? And because you have to develop those skills, and it has to be like instant, because you don't know what's going to happen, it means that you start to gradually in your regular life learn how to deal with situations. So my stepdad, but he did raise me, he fell off a roof last March, and we got a phone call. Me and my husband, I have a new husband, not the same husband.
Yeah.
We got this phone call, and it was awful. And I went round there, and everyone else was panicking, and I was just like, right, we're going in the ambulance. We're going to do this. You need to call this person, and just complete calm.
Yeah.
And I fell to pieces afterwards.
Yeah.
But in the moment, and it's quite funny because my husband was a prison officer for a long time as well, and he has that same calmness where you just deal with it and get on with it, and then afterwards you can cry and feel those emotions, but in the moment you have to work with what you work with.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, growing up in a house with chaos and dysfunction can produce the same type of person. If there's a crisis going on, or if there's some sort of emergency, I'm your girl. Like, I can manage a situation, somehow stay calm, because I'm used to navigating that kind of stuff. You know, when you grow up in that kind of environment, you're just constantly on guard. And so you actually develop characteristics that help you through these really chaotic times. I understand that level of being able to remain calm when you need to, right? Yeah.
I listened to your story and it did resonate with me because my biological father is an alcoholic, and my stepfather is also an alcoholic. And so your kind of chaos of the growing up was my earlier life.
Yeah.
And with my stepfather, although he is an alcoholic, he didn't bring the same sort of chaos. So it wasn't kind of, there wasn't violence, there wasn't arguments.
Right.
But there was a lot of like sneaking around and doing things behind people's backs. And it's the same in the sense that you learn how to function around people that behave in a certain way.
Yes. I started this healing journey quite a while ago, but every time I interview people and I listen to their stories and we start talking about similarities and how we grew up and all of the things that happen, I always learn something about myself. And every time I hear something else, it's like, oh yes, I can resonate. And I think so many people are in the same boat. But I want to talk about common patterns of behavior and just communication styles, and definitely coming from the situations that we come from, how that impacts going into relationships. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So you only know what you know. And if you've never seen anything different, you don't actually know how to behave differently. It's only when you experience other people that you then start to think, oh, maybe that isn't the best way to react to things. And if you've grown up in a household where it is chaos and kind of parents don't communicate in the way that they probably should, so there's a lot of shouting and never any kind of solution. So the way that I grew up was there was always shouting. And even, you know, when I was a teenager and I started acting out and I started doing stupid things, it was always a lot of shouting, but there was never any solution to the shouting. It was just, we're going to shout at each other. And then we're going to get even more angry. And eventually maybe someone will leave. But
that's the solution, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's no actual problem solving in there.
No. Yeah.
But when you kind of start looking at that, and there are some people, like when I explained it in that way, they're like, oh, yes, there isn't actually a solution. We're just carrying on the same argument. And then the next time we have an argument, that one is still in that argument because we never actually came to any solution before.
Yeah.
When you start breaking that down and you start going, actually, you need to step away from that, work out what you're feeling, why you're feeling that way, and then come up with a solution. And I always say to people, sometimes other people don't want to listen. And you have to accept that there are some people that just won't listen. And if you point out to them, you know, in a calm way, you're not listening to me, I don't feel heard, and they still don't care, they're not your people.
Yeah.
Because if you've already worked on yourself and you've learned how to communicate to people in that way and they're still not recognizing it, then they just aren't your person.
Yeah. And sometimes that's your
yourself.
family too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody was taught that. And it's, on one hand, it's that they don't want to listen, but sometimes they don't know how. They really just don't know how to listen. They don't have the skills. They don't have the curiosity level either. They're so in their own heads. They're so in their own stuff and they're so stuck. They don't have the capacity to actually listen. And I find too that, like what you're saying is really developing, when you recognize that in yourself, that it's time to, I need to change this for myself because clearly that person isn't ready to move forward in this conversation or really hear me, then you have to go inward and you have to seek out another person or another avenue that is going to help, right?
Yeah. You just have to let it go. Like, you can only control yourself. You can only be in control of the way that you react to things. And it would be wonderful that, if we could get people to do exactly what we want them to do. And especially if there's like emotions going on and you need them, like, I really want you to kind of give me a reaction that I want. You can't actually control that.
No.
You can only control yourself.
If we could control other people, we wouldn't be having this awesome conversation. So would put a lot of people out of work, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Exactly. How do you address people, because you coach people as well? How do you coach people in that? How do you help them start to overcome those limiting communication styles and move past that?
So the first thing that I always get people to do is to start believing in themselves. And the reason that I do this is because I believe, from seeing it time and time again, that if you don't have good beliefs about yourself and you don't have love in yourself, it's kind of pointless teaching you what a healthy relationship looks like and how to communicate, because you won't actually know what your wants and your needs are because you don't love yourself enough to know them.
Yeah.
So that would always kind of be my first step with anyone. But in terms of actual, skills of communication, practicing being assertive. So many people go in and they think being assertive is being difficult. It's,
Right.
I'm being difficult with you and I don't want to do what you want me to do. But it's not that. What it is you being respectful, but also putting out what you need. So being respectful to your own wants and your needs. And there is a skill to it. And there's certain like kind of language to it of, I hear what you're saying, but this is what I need.
Right.
And it just kind of takes away any sort of the aggressiveness, because often people will put their thoughts and their wants onto people and really push it. And if people don't agree, they're like, no, you're wrong. That doesn't work, because you can't change someone else's thoughts.
Yeah.
Or you get other people that will just sit back and let everyone, have their stuff and never taking into consideration what they actually want. They're the view is, we call it passive, but they just don't say anything. They're like, yeah, do what you want.
Yeah. It's like an avoidant.
Yeah. And that's not serving anyone either.
No.
And so I always get people to go through which one is you, which one sounds more like you.
Yeah.
Okay, how can we work on that? And I do tend to do like one-to-ones where I'm giving them examples and then getting them to explain back to me, is that passive? Is it aggressive? Is it assertive?
Yeah.
Which one is the way that you should react that is respecting everyone's feelings rather than just
it's like
one
relearning
person.
words, right? I mean, it's really just peeling back the layers. You need to relearn actual phrases and how to say the words to have that kind of vocabulary in yourself, right? A lot of people don't, and so they don't know where to start. So that's super important. I want to talk about the self-love thing. I know you have a self-love blueprint on your website, which is great. I downloaded that, and honestly, that was something that was really challenging for me in the beginning. I didn't have a lot. I didn't understand it. I grew up thinking you just take care of everyone else, and that my level of worthiness was pretty low. And it's really relearning how to actually pay attention to yourself and how to think more inwards instead of constantly thinking outwards and taking care of everyone else. And that's not just from people who come from the backgrounds we come from. It's a lot of women too. It can be a gender thing as well. Women take care of everybody and put themselves last. But the self-love, honestly, it's such a huge foundational piece. So do you want to talk about that?
So many people, they kind of mistake self-love for kind of overconfidence. Or in the UK, we call it being cocky.
Yeah.
Is that,
We do too.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But it isn't that. It isn't you kind of saying, I'm amazing to everyone else. It's just you saying it to yourself. And I think it kind of starts with our beliefs. So like you saying about taking care of other people, that comes from a belief about yourself. And a lot of the time, things will happen to us in our life. We don't have to have deep trauma. It could just be like one event.
Right.
And we will start to think, well, because that happened, it means I am.
Yeah.
I am unworthy. If you've had lots of bad breakups, people start to think it's a me problem because that happened. I'm not lovable.
Yeah.
And I will always say you need to start challenging your own beliefs. So when you start thinking, oh, it's because it's a me problem, simple one is what evidence? What evidence?
Yeah.
And it can't be the evidence that other people have done this to you, because there will be other people around you that love you.
Yeah.
Most people. Not every, I do know that there are some people that don't have anyone. But it could even be like at work, people that like you. So then you don't have the actual evidence that you are completely unlovable, because there are
Exactly.
other people that love you.
It's like somehow in your head, you have given the ultimate authority about who you are, and you forget there's a lot of other people around you. Like, ask some questions, start getting curious about how other people feel. You can find evidence that you're loved in so many places. People forget about that.
And I think talking nicely to yourself. So when we were kids, the majority of us, when we did something, people, you had parents around you, you had people at school saying, well done, you did a great job, ticks on your work at school, that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden we become adults and it's like that, it just stops.
Nobody's giving you gold stars as an adult.
No one's a cheerleader for you. No one's standing there saying, yeah, you can do it.
Yeah.
And I do think that has a massive effect on how we think about ourselves, because, it would be great if we all had people behind us going, yes, go for it. You've got this. You can do this. In the way that, like, I do that with my kids.
Yeah.
And I hope that when they're adults, I don't stop doing that, because I know about this cycle. But when you are an adult, if you haven't got those people around you to do that, which most people, it's just natural. It just doesn't happen anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You need to be doing it for yourself. So you need to be constantly saying, well done, you've got this. When I've worked with people that have got addictions, they find it so difficult when a family member says to them, well done. Because they're like, well done for being a regular person that doesn't take drugs.
Yeah.
They really struggle with the concept of that. And I always say that no matter kind of who you are, what your issue is, you've been through something. Everyone's been through something that was hard. And the fact that you got through it, you need to be congratulating yourself. If no one else is saying it to you, you need to be saying it to yourself. And the simplest way to actually get yourself to believe it is to say it in the mirror. And just like literally looking at yourself. You are great. You are amazing. You are lovable. You can do this, whatever it is. And I do that like when I present webinars and when I used to present to like rooms full of people. Before I went out or obviously went online, I would stand in the mirror and tell myself how great I was at presenting.
That's awesome.
And that is kind of the first step to starting to love yourself. You just have to basically trick your brain into believing something else. And then eventually, if you do it enough times,
Yeah.
you will naturally just start believing it.
Yeah. I mean, if you really think about it, it's a cycle. When we're really little, we think we're the best, you know? We're very, very egocentric as kids, and we think we're great. Not in a bad way. We really believe that we're great. And things happen in life, and, you know, circumstances happen and families happen and whatever happens, and the programming gets changed, because that's really what it is. It's just programming. And when you think about it, like what you're talking about is tricking your brain. It's like thinking about it as a computer system, reprogramming that computer system to have a different operating, you know, and it's completely doable. What's in there is not a forever program, you know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think it is. That's why it's so hard to change that and to start seeking out that self-love, right?
And I think to have people around you. So if you don't have people that are giving you that,
Mm-hmm.
go find them.
Yeah.
Because there are lots of groups out there that promote various different things. You know, you can go to a book club, you can go anything that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
There will be a club for it. And you can go and speak to those people, and they will just lift you up.
So true.
And then you're saying it to yourself, and it's just a constant. It's going into your brain that you are great.
Yeah.
And naturally, you know, give yourself a week and tell yourself for 5 minutes a day how amazing you are. At the end of that week, you will feel better.
Yeah. It sounds so simple, you know, like when you say it sounds so simple. And, you know, when I first started learning about affirmations, it sounded like a lot of fluffy BS, to be honest. And it was hard to kind of wrap my head around, well, this is dumb. Like you're saying something in the mirror, you're saying something 3 times a day or 10 times a day, and you're like, this is stupid. It's not making any difference. And you keep practicing it because you have some coach in your head, you know, encouraging you, and you have that support, which is so important. And one day you kind of have this glimmer of like, oh, wow, I did this. Like, I am that person. I can do this. And it doesn't all happen at once. You know, it's a slow process, but it's so worth it to keep pushing and pushing yourself with all these little things. Yeah, I love that. So where they can download your self-love blueprint?
So on my website, thesamnorris.com, it's on there.
Yeah, it's great. It's really in depth and highly recommended. It'll give you a good starting point on like where to go, right? Where to start. And then reaching out to a coach too is so important. Having support, having someone in your corner. Having
someone
awesome.
that is going to say, you know, yay for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's something missing about the little steps, you know, like when you're talking about celebrating stuff, and most people don't celebrate the little tiny steps. They wait for the big win, and then if that doesn't come, it's like this letdown, right? So, yeah.
I think Rome wasn't built in a day, was it? That's the saying.
Exactly.
And if you've been through something traumatic, a week later, you're not going to be okay all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It takes a while, and especially if you've had kind of certain habits. So people that have addictions, if you've spent 10 years with an addiction, just doing a week not doing that is not going to bring that out of you.
Yeah.
Because it's an addiction, but then it is also a habit, and habits are hard to break.
Yeah.
So, if you've spent 10 years telling yourself you are awful, it's not going to easily overnight be like, I am amazing now. But with little tiny steps, and then having people around you that will be going, you can do this. I'm setting you this task to do, so now you're accountable and you have to do it.
Yeah.
It starts to get better. Life starts to get brighter.
Yeah, it's so important, so important. What are some of the common challenges that individuals find when they're trying to improve their relationships?
A lot of the time, it's their own thoughts and their own beliefs about what a relationship should look like. And a lot of the time they get stuck on the fact that they have been stuck. So we do a lot about patterns.
Okay.
And how we subconsciously repeat the same things over and over again because it makes us feel safe.
Yeah.
And I describe it like an inner guard dog. So if you had a guard dog, I grew up with Dobermans, so they are trained. They're trained to protect you. If someone breaks into your house, they're going to bite that person. That's what they're trained to do. If a new person that to you is safe comes into your house, that dog doesn't automatically know it's a safe person.
Yeah.
If your ex-partner, who your dog knows, came into your house, despite the fact that they hurt you and they did all these different things, your dog is going to sit down and be like, hey, pet me.
Yeah.
And that is what your subconscious mind is like. It's trying to keep you safe.
Yeah.
When it sees familiar situations, familiar patterns, it thinks that those things are safe. Even though logically we know that's not true. And when people start to realise that and they start looking at, oh, this relationship, I did this, and then the next relationship, it was the same thing. And although these people had different faces, they were pretty much the same person. They struggle with that concept that they've kept repeating the things that they don't actually want.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that a lot because up until kind of I started doing my journey around unhealthy relationships, every relationship that I had been in up until that point was just my biological father reincarnated. Different people, but the same, exactly the same behaviours that I had seen growing up that I didn't want. I didn't actually want any of that. You know, I grew up being like, I don't ever want to be with someone like that.
Yep.
And then I end up attracting those people into my life anyway.
Yeah.
But when you start then looking at what those behaviours are, the patterns, and you can start kind of pinpointing this, like if you think about controlling behaviour, there's certain things that go with controlling behaviour and they tend to start really small. When you start recognising those things and you meet new people, you can instantly spot it.
Yeah.
But the first stage of actually looking at those patterns is something that people find difficult, and I get a lot of tears.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of tears. Like when I realise, wow, why am I doing this? I've cried a lot about it because logically it doesn't make any sense.
It's almost like facing yourself, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're face to face with your own stuff, and that's one of the hardest things to look at. I love the guard dog analogy. It actually brings it into a visual picture, which is great because a lot of people don't see that. If we're unable to see our stuff, we just can't figure it out either. We can't get to the other side and find that solution by ourselves. And I think people that resist therapy or coaching or talking to someone else because they're afraid to look at their stuff, what's on the other side? Yes, tears and all that stuff, but that's breakthrough, and that is huge. And I love how you said that about, you just get through it, and then all of a sudden you can see that stuff, and then you can pinpoint that a mile away. Like, what an amazing gift and skill that would be for people.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, I would always recommend that you get someone who kind of knows what they're doing to go through these things with you.
That's right, yeah.
But I do accept that there are some people that can't afford to do that. And simple thing that you can do is ask the people around you, what are some behaviours that you see me repeating? What are some patterns that you see me repeating? They're the people that know you the most.
Yeah. And sometimes Those are the people that are afraid to say something because they don't want to hurt your feelings. But if you go seek out that information, you opening the door to even a friend, you know, that was otherwise maybe trying to protect you in their own way, but
and you
just opening that door.
I'm not going to be offended. I'm just trying.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's huge.
Yeah. Well, I say to my husband and my children every week on a Sunday, I say, what would you like to my children? Out of 10, how would you rate me this week as a mum?
That's
and
awesome.
Then they're like, oh, it was an 8, or one time it was a 5, and I was like, oh, well, how could I be better? How could I get to a 10? And this is my son. He was like, well, let me go on the PlayStation more. And I was like, that's not a real thing. Like,
that's a little manipulation there.
Yeah. But just asking those questions and being like, I'm not going to be offended, but I genuinely want to move forward with my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Honestly, I wish I would have had that when I was raising my kids. I probably would have got a few 2s, but whatever. I would have been able to. It's great. It expresses a lot of growth when you can do that, when you can ask someone, you know, to give you honest feedback. And that's the best way to grow for sure. It's curiosity, right? Getting curious with yourself, and other people. What are some of the things that you do to prioritize healthy relationship? Like in your daily life, what are some of the things that help you keep your relationships healthy?
Making time for yourself. Mm-hmm. People will often be like, oh, I need to kind of be with a person all the time, and that just isn't right. You need time on your own. You need time like with your friends by yourself and family by yourself. Communication, definitely, and asking those questions. So if you're already in a relationship, start asking your partner, you know, what do you think is going well for us right now?
Yeah.
I predominantly work with people that are single, and I teach them to start asking those questions beforehand. So the thing is, in life, we review everything, you know, like we go onto Google and we review a bad restaurant, and we review why we didn't get a job and all these different things.
Yeah.
But we don't review our relationships with people. We don't review, what went well, what didn't go so well, what would I have done differently next time, what was I feeling, how did that appear in my body? Because if you're feeling a certain way, something will be happening. So it could be your heart racing, you could be sweating, something is going on. And then you can start to recognize, when you realize that, the next time it happens, oh, my heart's racing and maybe I need to go calm down. And that is what I would say, start evaluating everything. If something isn't going right, if you're single and you've had bad relationship, start evaluating, okay, what happened? What would I do differently? And if you're in a relationship, if you have an argument, okay, why did that argument happen? What would I have done differently next time? How did I react? How did they react? And then having those conversations when you're actually calm. I always do this, and you know, this is a great technique for people that have got children as well, where I say, hold on, I need to go wash my hands. Everyone in my house, they just laugh at me because
that's code, right?
Yeah. So I can feel kind of my heart rate increasing, and I'm like, okay, I put cold water on my hands and I calm down.
Yeah. That's
naturally
awesome.
Like, it's just that's science. That is cold. And it's simple. You go away, you calm down, and then you can come back with a new mind frame, and maybe not say things that you are going to regret in the future.
Yeah, that's a great technique. I recently heard on I can't remember what podcast it was, and it was because yesterday we were talking about love, and this elderly couple had been together for like 60 years or something, and they were talking about, and they were both psychologists, and they were talking about how they fight, like how they argue and stuff. And so they had come up with this years ago, that they each get 5 minutes. So the one person gets 5 minutes and the other person does not interrupt. They don't even say anything. They don't react. They just let that person go. And when their 5 minutes is up, then they get 5 minutes. So each person gets the floor uninterrupted. And then they don't even talk about it. They say, okay, we'll come back in 24 hours. And then they have time to process. They have time to think. And then they come back and they talk about it in a calm manner. And they said it just happens calmly because you've given yourself time to think, right? It's no different than in the moment going to wash your hands, right?
Yeah.
So,
and a good thing to add to that is if you struggle with that concept of staying quiet, to have a symbol. So you could, I don't even know what I've got here. So like this little mouse thing.
Yeah.
This is the symbol that it is my turn to talk and it is not your turn to talk.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I'm finished, I pass it to you and then you can talk.
Yeah.
And it's like just this having the symbol there.
Yeah.
And I've done this in group work, which obviously you'll know about Al-Anon and how that works, where, you know, people talk over each other and stuff.
Yeah.
In groups, it is like that, right? If you've kind of got a group that like they all like to talk, right? It's your turn. You're holding on to the thing.
Yeah.
No one else is allowed to talk.
It seems like such a childhood thing, but I was in a communication course and the same thing. We had a talking stick. So I don't even know what it was. You just pick something up, and if you didn't have the talking stick and you open your mouth, you're getting in trouble, right? Yeah. So yeah, and it works. It's sometimes these simplest things work the best, and people overlook them because they think it's so silly, but it's not. It's genuinely very impactful. So that's awesome. I have a question for you before we close out. If you could give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would it be? Maybe not 18, but you know, that area, that age range.
I would say that it's not that big of a deal. That everything at that age seemed so heightened and, you know, this could ruin my life. I need to have everything on track right now. Yeah. And I think it was only, I'd probably say I was probably about 24 when things really started to click into place. When I was 18 was chaos. Yeah. And I was drinking a lot and it just wasn't a great time for me. And I think everyone thinks that they should have it together because you've all of a sudden become an adult. And now you should just know everything and be everything that you're supposed to be. And it doesn't work like that. So,
no.
Yeah.
It's really, it's like a gap age, right? It's like this in between. You don't know who you are yet. You're really just trying to figure out the world. You're still a kid in a lot of aspects. And yeah, I agree with that. Just don't take everything so seriously.
And
it's not
your brain
the end
isn't
of
fully formed
at
that point. And you're expected to make life decisions that could affect your life forever. So yeah.
Honestly, I think that advice could go for a lot of people at a lot of ages. You know, don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah. And you can change at any point. Just because you get to 45 and you've been doing something for 20 years, it doesn't mean that you can't then be like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
That's
so true.
You know, like I smoked for 12 years, I think. That doesn't mean that I have to smoke forever. Like I've been giving up 10 years now.
Yeah. So it doesn't define who you are. Like you have the power to change your life. Yeah. It's so true. And I can attest it's living proof, right? I'm nothing like I was 15 years ago. So, and that's just, it's work. It's hard work, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. Yeah. And getting curious about yourself. I love that. It's, So is there anything else that you want to talk about, or what do you got going on right now?
At the moment, I am just focusing on the podcast, really. And my current clients, I will launch again. I do have a program for people that is the 30-day program to take them through that process of loving themselves and then learning what a healthy relationship is.
Yeah. That's online?
It's not open at the moment.
Oh, okay.
People can get on the wait list, but it's
Nice.
not it's not open. I like to focus my time like one person at a time, but one lot of people at a time, and actually give them my full attention rather than continuously running.
Do you do online stuff with clients?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So I'll post all that in the show notes too. I want to ask you too, what made you come up with the name of your podcast? You want to tell everybody what the name of your podcast is?
So my podcast is called Whatever Happened to the Gentleman. And it was a play on words of, what gentleman means, kind of like the type of person that opens a door for you, but also the idea that men can be emotional too. And I love the name. Like, people have said to me that I should probably change it because it obviously does say men in it. And I do work with women as well. Yeah. And I did a whole episode where I kind of talked about, this isn't just for men. Yeah. It's for women too. But I like the name because
I think a lot of women are attracted to it too because they want to know. Great name. And I've listened to your podcast and it's awesome. So I will put a link in the show notes for that too. So people can listen to you and all your great advice. I've enjoyed having you on, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks.
Take care. Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Becoming Sound. If this episode resonated with you in some way, please share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps to get this information out to more people who may need it. If you have a sec, I would love a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, hit the 5-star rating and give me a review. When you're scrolling, follow me on my social platforms, and I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a fabulous day, lots of love and gratitude from me. Please note, the views, information, and opinions expressed during the Becoming Sound podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved. The content of this podcast is to educate, inform, and for entertainment purposes only. This podcast series and the content presented does not constitute for medical or other professional advice or services. If you are in crisis or in need of help, please contact your medical or professional provider.